I know this moment. You've been putting in the work, weeks, maybe months, and then one day something finally clicks. Your child gets through a loud, chaotic birthday party without falling apart. Your dog walks past the neighbor's reactive dog, calm as anything. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. You think, okay, we're getting somewhere. And then 2 days later, it's like it never happened. Your child loses it over a cup being the wrong color. Your dog loses his mind at a jogger he's seen 100 times, and the question comes up before you can stop it. Did we go backwards? Did I do something wrong? Are we starting over? No, you're not starting over, and you didn't do anything wrong. But I understand why it feels that way, and I want to talk about it. This is Under the Same Roof. I'm Jennifer Tan, certified family dog mediator and professional dog trainer, and this is episode 3. I've been living the intersection of reactive dogs and neurodivergent family life for long enough to know that nothing in this territory moves in a straight line. Not the understanding, not the relationship building, and definitely not the progress. Today, I want to talk about why that is. Because I think when families understand what's actually happening in those moments of apparent regression, it changes everything about how they respond to them. A bad day is not a verdict, but you have to understand what a bad day actually is before you can stop treating it like one. We like linear progress because it's easy to track. You learn something, you remember it, you do it reliably, done. That's the model most of us grew up with. But that model falls apart the moment a real nervous system is involved. When my son was younger, I kept bumping into this. He'd manage something hard, and I'd feel the relief of it, and then a week later it would be like the skill had vanished. I used to read that as failure. His, sometimes mine. It took me a long time to understand what was actually happening. The skill hadn't vanished. It was still there. What wasn't there was the capacity to access it. He hadn't slept well. The school day had been relentlessly loud. There were things stacking up that I wasn't even tracking, and by the time we hit the moment that needed that skill, the tank was already empty. The skill existed. The bandwidth to reach for it did not. I see the exact same thing with my dogs, and with almost every family I work with. In dog training and family dog mediation, we talk a lot about cumulative stress, sometimes called the stress bucket. The idea is simple. Every experience adds something to the load. A strange noise in the night, a new smell in the building hallway, an unfamiliar dog barking from down the street, even a small change in routine. None of these things might seem like much on their own, but they add up. And when the bucket gets full, capacity drops. This is not a training problem, it's biology. Dogs have a finite amount of cognitive and emotional bandwidth on any given day, just like we do. Poor sleep raises cortisol. Elevated cortisol makes impulse regulation harder and learning less effective. So a dog who seemed perfectly settled yesterday, relaxed on leash, responsive, unbothered by kids, might genuinely struggle today. Not because he's forgotten anything, because his bucket was already overflowing before you even clipped the leash. Roscoe is my clearest example of this. He's a reactive dog with a complicated start. Medical issues in his first weeks, poor socialization, genetics that lean hard toward vigilance. On a settled morning, after a calm decompression walk, he can pass things now that would have sent him over thresholds 6 months ago. But if he had a rough night, or there's been noise in our building, or I'm tense and my body is saying so without my realizing it, he picks that up. His threshold shrinks. Same dog, same street, completely different result. He hasn't forgotten anything. He just doesn't have room for it today. Something I had to learn the hard way in both parts of my life is that skills are context dependent. They don't get installed once and work everywhere. They get learned in specific environments, with specific emotional states, with specific amounts of sleep and felt safety behind them. My son learned to regulate in quiet spaces first. A calm room at home looked nothing like the school cafeteria, loud, unpredictable, overwhelming. He wasn't less capable in noisy environments. He was still building that capacity for that specific context. Once I stopped reading the cafeteria as failure and started reading it as information, everything shifted. He wasn't regressing. He was still learning, just in a much harder setting. Same with dogs. A dog with a solid recall in the backyard is not the same dog in a busy park. The park is a completely different sensory and emotional world. The skill has to be rebuilt there, with all of that context factored in. That takes time. It takes a nervous system that has enough left in the tank to actually learn. When we forget this, we catastrophize. We decide the kid will never manage or the dog is too far gone. Neither of those things is true. They just need more time, in more contexts, with a support system that isn't expecting peak performance when they're running on empty. This is the reframe that changed the most for me in both worlds. A bad day is information, not a conclusion. When my son was really struggling, I trained myself to ask a different question. Not what did I do wrong, or is he getting worse? But what's the load right now that I'm not seeing? Is he getting sick? Did something happen at school he doesn't have words for yet? Did a routine shift that seemed minor to me, but registered as significant to his nervous system? I ask the same questions now when one of my dogs has a hard day, or when a client's dog does. Was there a vet visit this week? A new baby in the house? A shift in the guardian's schedule? Did the dog sleep badly because the neighbors had people over until midnight? These things count. They're not excuses. They're explanations. And when you have an explanation, you can respond with curiosity instead of frustration. Ray, my other dog, is generally the more settled one. He's people-oriented, attuned, easy to read. But even he has days where his on-leash reactivity flares in a way that feels like we've stepped back in time to his first weeks with me. On those days, I don't push. I don't increase the difficulty. I cut the walk short, drop all expectations, and spend the time giving him things that feel safe and easy. The next day, almost always, he's back. He wasn't going backwards. He was telling me something about where he was that day, and my job was to listen. If progress isn't linear, then the way we respond to setbacks has to shift too. A few things that have helped me in both worlds. Stop measuring against the best day. The best day is not the baseline. The baseline is what your child or your dog can do on a regular, unremarkable Tuesday. That's what you build from. Expecting peak performance every time sets everyone up to feel like they're failing, including you. When things get hard, reduce the ask before you increase it. A depleted nervous system does not learn well under pressure. It gets more stressed. The instinct to push harder when something falls apart is understandable, but it usually makes things worse. Pull back. Make it easier. Let the system recover. There will be another day. Write down the good days, not just the hard ones. Progress becomes invisible when you're only tracking the stumbles. I've had families absolutely certain their dog was deteriorating, and when we look at their notes together, we realize the hard days are actually spreading further and further apart. The wins were real. They just weren't getting recorded. And make peace with the fact that there is no finish line. This was the hardest one for me. With my son, with my dogs, this is ongoing. The goal was never to arrive somewhere. It's to keep building the relationship, keep adjusting to what they need, keep showing up differently as they grow and change. That is not a failure of the process. That is the whole point of it. Whether it's my son or Roscoe or Ray or a family I'm working with, what I keep coming back to is this. Nervous systems are not machines. They don't perform on command. They're shaped by genetics, by history, by what happened last week, by how much sleep was had, by whether the world felt safe that morning. Progress comes in waves. You get a stretch of good weeks and then a hard one, and then you look back and realize the hard ones don't hit as hard as they used to. That's not going backwards. That's what moving forward actually looks like. So the next time your dog reacts to something you thought was behind you, or your kid falls apart over something that seemed manageable last week, before you spiral, just pause. Ask, what's the load today? What do they need from me right now, in this moment? Probably not more pressure, probably just more understanding. Next episode, I want to shift perspective entirely. We've spent 3 episodes looking at our dog's behavior from the outside. This time, I want to go inside the experience. What is your dog actually living through when the household is in a hard stretch? When the sensory environment is unpredictable? When the nervous systems around him are already stretched? When nobody is watching closely enough to see what he's trying to say? That's what we're getting into next time. And it's an episode I think a lot of families in this community have needed for a while. I'm Jennifer Tan. This is Under the Same Roof. Understanding before strategies. Always.